Hello everyone. My name is Ashima Thodengil, Assistant Professor, PG Department of English, GEMS Arts and Science College, Autonomous. Here, I will be dealing with the poem Africa. Africa is a poem written by David Diop. Here, the poem is a discussion of the resistance of colonization. Here we can see that the poem is divided or it is structured into three parts. That at the beginning we can see the pre-colonial glory, and it shifts to the colonial exploitation. And towards the end of the poem, uh, it gives us a hope for a rebirth. Let's get into the details of the poet David Diop. David Diop is a French West African poet born in 1927 in France, and he was a part of Negritude movement. Negritude movement, as we know, it was a strong protest against the French colonial rule in Africa, and it was the affirmation of African identity. Here we can see he reacted against the French policy of assimilation. What is assimilation? Assimilation is the belief that Africa is a deprived land that possesses no identity or no history or any culture. And his works discusses themes like identity, culture, and politics. Then let's have a discussion on the poem Africa. Africa, my Africa, Africa of proud warriors in ancestral savannas, Africa of whom my grandmother sings on the banks of the distant river. Here, he begins with a personal and intimate connection with Africa. He establishes a connection with Africa at the very beginning of the poem. And here, the usage, proud warriors, it denotes the warriors, the leaders of Africa who defend the colonization. And again, there is ancestral savannas. Ancestral savannas, as we know, it is the grasslands that were the home of this African community over generations. Then, Africa of whom my grandmother sings. Grandmother sings. Here we can see the rich tradition of their storytelling and especially oral tradition. On the banks of distant river and towards the end of the stanza, he is having a disconnection with Africa that we can see in the coming lines. I have never known you, but your blood flows in my veins. Even though he don't know about Africa, Africa's blood, the black blood flows in his veins, and this black blood here it suggests the African lineage and your beautiful black blood that irrigate the fields, the blood of your sweat, the sweat of your work, the work of your slavery. And he discusses about the painful slavery and oppression that these people have undergone, and it reflects on the scars of their past sufferings. And here we can see the usage of black blood that irrigates the fields, where he uses this idea of growth and fertility that indicates African labor. Their labor is being used in slavery. Blood of your sweat, the sweat of your work, the work of your slavery. Here we can see blood of your sweat, the hard labor or sacrifice and possibly even pain. And sweat of your work emphasizes the physical and emotional toll of labor. And then the work of your slavery, that particular phrase suggests it refers the historical reality of slavery or the forced labor. Africa, tell me Africa, is this your back that is unbent? This back that never breaks under the weight of humiliation, this back trembling with red scars and saying no to the whip under the midday sun. And here in this stanza, he seeks answers from Africa. He wants to know the real truth about African history. Is this your back that is unbent? And he is confused again. He is confused in having the African suppression. This back that never breaks under the weight of humiliation. He says about the African strength and determination. This back that trembling with red scars, and he acknowledges the pain and suffering of African people endured. And saying no to the whip is a powerful image of resistance and their refusal to this subjugation. But a grave voice answers me, impetuous child, that tree, young and strong, that tree over there, splendidly alone amidst white and faded flowers, that is your Africa springing up anew, springing up patiently, obstinately, whose fruit bit by bit acquires the bitter taste of liberty. And here, to all his questions, a somber and solemn response comes. It was a grave and mature response that he receives, and that voice says or addresses him as an impetuous child. And it points to a tree and says that that tree over there splendidly alone amidst white and faded flowers, that is your Africa. And you can see that tree, that Africa is springing up anew in between the faded flowers, faded white flowers, which suggest the faded colonization. Springing up patiently, obstinately, whose fruit bit by bit acquires the bitter taste of liberty. And here it is used metaphor as Africa of sprouting tree. Then we can see that it is it, the poet says that the liberty tastes bitter, that liberty tastes bitter because it comes out of struggle, that it doesn't come out of easy deeds, it comes out of struggle, thus it tastes bitter. And that's it about the explanation about the poem. Let's move to the poetic devices. First one, repetition. You can see Africa, my Africa is repeated at the very beginning of the poem. And then alliteration. Alliteration, as we know, is the repetition of consonant sounds. Here, your beautiful black blood, this B sound is repeated over and over again. Then here we have personification, where Africa is anthropomorphized. That means human qualities are associated with inhuman or non-human entities. Then anaphora. Anaphora, here we can see Africa as an anaphora. Then anadiplosis. Anadiplosis, the blood of your sweat, the sweat of your work, the work of your slavery. Here, anadiplosis is a anadiplosis is in which a word or a clause is repeated at the end of a clause, then it is repeated at the beginning of the clause. And that we can see here that the blood of your sweat and the sweat of your work, the blood of your sweat, it ends with the phrase this your sweat, and again it is repeating with the sweat of your work. Okay, so there is anadiplosis. And then the themes. The major themes discussed here is the colonialism and the exploitation. David Diop's poems often discusses about the truth regarding colonial reality, and African identity and heritage is being used in his poems, to establish an African identity by using the words like black, then Resilience and hope. Again, there comes the theme resilience and hope. There we can see a kind of hope emerging towards the end of the poem. The poem is optimistic and there is a call for liberation. And the significance of the poem, it is an anti-colonial protest. The poem itself is a protest against the colonial rule and the celebration of African identity. And it brings forth a hope for a better future. And that's it about the themes and significance of the poem. Here we have only a brief discussion about the poem Africa by David Diop, and this poem can be interpreted in multiple ways. And that's it about my presentation. Thank you.